G'day and welcome to Kenty Blitz, your afternoon hit of rugby league news. Paul Kent, mate, what about you? You're on fire. Last time I checked, I think you're the number one sports podcast in Australia.
Oh, that might have been some time ago, Tom. I don't know if that's still around. We'll see how it goes. Mate, welcome to you too. Tom, you've been missing on us. I probably should just preface this because I can just imagine how this is going to roll. So the People's Champ is back, ladies and gentlemen. But Tom has been missing for legitimate reasons. Which it's a good result for you, mate. Not so good for me, I must say. But you've got a little bit of news for us?
Yeah, I'm shuffling around trying to, I have successfully found a new job. So been moving around, just trying to lock all that in. And kind of from next week onwards, I'm going to be moving around a bit. It's going to be hard for me to record in the middle of the day. So the last couple of weeks I've been trying to line that up. And it's come off. So don't know how much I'll be in Sydney.
Yeah.
But it's been a shame because this is bloody fun.
Yeah, well, not to worry, mate. It's been a pleasure anyway, mate. The short time it's been going, the show. But good luck with everything too.
Who knows when I'll be able to drop in and make a guest appearance. I think
so.
Chimes does it once a week, so who knows?
Let's hope so.
Mate, enough of that because another massive 48 hours in rugby league. And in the last couple of hours, it sounds like Lachlan Galvin won't even be lining up for the Tigers this week.
No, look, all reports he's got to play for West Magpies against Parramatta on Monday at Lidcombe Oval. So I tell you what, that's a throwback to the ages. Magpies, Eels, Lidcombe Oval. But look, it's a fascinating one, isn't it? It's shocked everybody. The Tigers in 24 hours have transitioned from he won't be released and that they have no intention of letting him go anywhere and that he'll play out the rest of his time at the West Tigers. But then within 24 hours, we've heard the playing group, the leadership group has gone to Benji Marshall. They don't want him in the side. Clearly, Benji has been stung, I think, by some reports that are out there that it was his coaching that was one of the motivating factors for him to want to get out of the club. And look, it's long odds now. Look, I'll declare it now. He won't be at Tigers next season. This season, I think, chance he could move on. Who does that go down to? Do you think? Is that a him thing or is that a club thing? How's it going to play out? Well, it's a funny one, okay, because, look, let's preface this by we've got this little bullshit rule in rugby league called the November 1 anti-tampering deadline. So legally under NRL rules, Lachlan Galvin is not allowed to talk to another club until November 1. I am strongly led to believe that he's already basically agreed to terms with Parramatta. It's ready to go. Not allowed to do it, so that'll be denied. But it looks like for all intents he's going to Parramatta. The deal is all but done. It can't be done legally until after November 1.
No one said this Parramatta thing, by the way, so don't just slip that in there. That's big news.
But yeah, the Eels have been thrown up obviously as one of the teams, okay? One of the teams. Manly was another, Bulldogs were another. The understanding is he is going to Parramatta. They've agreed to terms. It's all done. I don't know the details of the terms. It can't be released until November 1 unless the Tigers give him permission to negotiate. Now, normally you'd say, why would they? Mate, let's just let him sit here and sweat, okay, even though it's all a bit of a farce and a charade. That said, though, they might be looking to say, you know what, we know he's going, let's get rid of him sooner rather than later. And there's a chance they may even try and move him on before June 30, if that's possible, if they can find a nibble. Lots got to happen. There's all these dominoes have got to fall over for that to happen. But as we know, Parramatta have lost Dylan Brown. Dylan Brown is going to go to Newcastle next season. Newcastle, if they could afford him under the salary cap, would take him this season if Parramatta released him. Parramatta would probably take Lachlan Galvin this season if Dylan Brown moved on. The problem is that the Knights don't have the room in the cap for Dylan Brown. They'd have to release somebody, and there's probably no one there at the moment that they can do that with. And certainly they couldn't organise a three-way swap, for example. Galvin to Para, Edwards to Brown to the Knights, and then the Knights send someone to Tigers. So they all finish up with a player.
You can't see Jackson Hastings going back to the Tigers.
Well, you know what? That's the thing. If Jackson Hastings hadn't already been there and basically blotted his copybook at the Tigers, you probably could have done the three-way swap. So I went through. I don't think the Knights have really got anyone else at Newcastle that the Tigers would like to pick up as a three-way trade to do that and make it work. There could be. They might find it, but yeah, they had anticipated at one point Galvin going to the back row. If Knights can look at a back rower that Tigers might be interested in, then it could happen. lots got to happen for that to happen. First thing is that the Tigers have got to give Galvin permission officially to negotiate so the Parramatta deal can be ticked off.
The whole thing is an absolute shambles, and I want to talk a bit about the NRL's response later, but as a fan, I want Lachie Galvin playing every week. I think at the moment you probably want Dylan Brown to just start playing for the Knights as soon as possible. I mean, Parra's season's effectively over, but definitely if Lachie Galvin doesn't play this week and he turns out for the Magpies, I mean, I feel like your average rugby league fan is just the person who misses out there.
Yeah, well, they are. Look, Tom, that's what's... The game's got to sit down and probably have to once again have a look at this. We saw Dylan Brown come out a day after his first game of the season, announced that he was leaving the club to go to the Knights. A couple of weeks later, Daly Cherry Evans goes on TV and tells the public before he tells his own club that he won't be staying at the club next year. And so straight away, the news cycle was dominated with that story and also where is he going to go. Then we've got here just a few weeks later now, Lachie Galvin is leaving his club technically a year and a half before he's allowed to go. Okay. But the whole rugby league discussion has been about that. Now, there is a theory within the NRL that this sort of stuff's not actually that bad for the game because it stops people talking about other sports. Couldn't tell you where the Swans are playing this week.
Well, so you're saying the NRL runs a kind of soap opera on the side?
Well, it is. I got in trouble.
Watch the footy on the weekend and then the soap opera midweek.
I called rugby league a soap opera and I upset a few people. But it is. It really is. It's just a cycle. There's the stuff that happens on the field and there's this whole other narrative that just takes place in and around the game. And this is part of that. But I think it is certainly frustrating for fans. Tigers fans are devastated and rightfully so. This guy was... he was the shining knight there for the last 12 months. This kid's going to be a potential superstar one day. And when you have a kid like him coming through your club, you're able to sit there and say, okay, and you can wear the losses and the disappointments because you can see brighter days ahead. That's all that's been tarnished now. That's clouded over. So I can understand the disappointment there. I do think it is becoming embarrassing. We do have these NRL contracts that mean nothing. We've got one down here. We'll pull that out. So there's an NRL contract these days. You know what you do with those, right? So that's all you can do these days. That's what they are. They are worth nothing, the NRL contract. The big part about it, the way you fix it, is you actually start making managers accountable. Righto? Let's make them accountable for example, November 1 deadlines, for managers negotiating when they're not allowed to, when they don't have permission. Players not allowed to get off contract. What he does, he just turns up the training. He kicks stones for about 3 weeks, 4 weeks. The club thinks, well, we're just wasting our time keeping him in here. Look at the way he's playing. So that's why they organise this. But if there was serious fines and disqualifications put in place for player managers who breach the rules, who do not only just lose that contract, but who the NRL should shut down their business. So it's not the player manager. I'll tell you an example. I'm jumping around a little bit here.
No, let's stay on this NRL thing because I think it's important. Like we spoke about this before, it's pissing fans off. And in the end, the NRL is an entertainment business. It exists to provide a lifestyle for the players or give them a job, but also it exists as an entertainment product. It exists for the fans.
Yeah. And Peter Philandis, as the chairman, is quite vocal about calling it entertainment. So I think at some point the NRL needs to acknowledge their own rhetoric and actually start accounting for that. Now, some years back, a player manager was suspended for some time for breaching the rules in a bad way. He participated in salary cap cheating. The NRL suspended him for some time, and he made such a fuss of the rules. Basically, he sat there, shared a big desk at his office with one of his staff members, and anytime anyone wanted to ring and negotiate or talk to him, because he wasn't technically allowed to, they just rang the guy sitting on the other side of the desk, put the phone on speaker, and the conversation was had. So there was no record of phone calls, no records that he'd actually been participating in any of this. But the deals were still going. He still copped his clip on the side, and off they went. And the NRL disappointingly knew about this. I know that they knew about this and got the well, what can we really do? Well, show some balls. You know what I mean? Show some balls and get in there and just say, mate, we've had a gutful, right? You're pissing us all off. You're embarrassing the game all the time with all this sort of stuff. I get the other side, the argument. Let's talk about it. It keeps us talking about the game, but it's starting to become just a joke. It really, really is. Like we're up to round 7. We've had 3 big name players all leave their teams with one bloke only had 1 game down. We've still got 3/4 of the season to go, and 3 of the biggest names in the game are probably not going to be at those clubs next year.
Yeah, I think it says a lot, the fact that last weekend's footy was outstanding. There were some huge upsets, teams coming into form, teams going out of form, and I mean, I don't know how we're going to go, but by the end of this show, I imagine we pretty much will have spoken about Lachlan Galvin for 48 hours.
I hope so. Yeah. Look, but the thing is, trade window I don't think works, because the managers are going to breach the trade windows. They'll do the negotiations before the trade window. Much like now they're doing the negotiations before the November 1 deadline. What they got to do is just keep the rule as it is, or find the rule that they think works best. And when someone breaches that rule, and there is evidence of that, and you can find that in emails, you take action, not against that player agent himself. You take action against that whole company. If he owns a company, then they all suffer. If he just works for the company, then his boss is sitting on top of him saying, under no circumstances do you cheat, because you put us all in danger. So it puts them into line. It's almost become self-managed in that respect. They just need a big cop looking over the top with a big stick to whack them if it happens. And until the NRL gets serious about it, we're just going to be treated like this year after year after year.
And it seems like every one of these things that happens, the likes of Isaac Moses almost get more powerful. And I think reading all the news today, the 3 names that are most over the articles are, there's Isaac Moses is kind of number 3, and then you got Benji, and you've got
Galvin.
You've got Galvin himself. So you got Galvin, Benji, and you'd expect the third name might be a Shane Richardson or something like that. But instead, we got the player manager right in the thick of all of this.
Well, the player manager doesn't have a strong relationship with Benji Marshall. That's one. He's got a strong. He manages Isaac Moses, who's his cousin or nephew.
Is it a poor relationship, or are they actually at loggerheads? Because I actually read something saying they don't like each other.
I don't know the full extent of the relationship. I've heard they don't like each other. I don't think there's a lot of. Certainly, there's no love there, and that's part of the narrative here too. Tom, is part of the reason the Sydney Morning Herald wrote this morning, and Michael Shamus wrote that Lachlan Galvin had no faith in Benji as the head coach to be able to take his football where he believes it's heading.
Reading that article, I honestly thought Shamus completely knifed Benji. I thought if I'm Benji in the future, I'm not getting near Shamus. I'm not giving him anything.
Yeah, well, look, I think the way to do that is to try and actually have relationships. For Benji, it might be a bit of pill for him at the moment, but he probably should try and form a relationship with Shamus. And at the very least, and what you can do is seek a response when that sort of article is getting written about you. But certainly that was a one-sided story that was essentially a bit of a slaughter of Benji's coaching credentials. There's no doubt that's pissed Benji off, okay? No doubt in the world. So when I saw then later reports come out that the leadership group had come to Benji and said, look, we don't want him in the side, I was a little bit suspicious of that, as opposed to, is that just a smoky that's been put out to cover how pissed off Benji is? And that Benji, after at first saying, look, he'll continue on as normal, thought, bugger this bloke, I'm not going to pick him in the side. It has happened before. We've seen, Wayne Bennett did it most famously 20-odd years ago now, about 22, 23 years ago, when Justin Hodges was a young kid coming through, destined for national honours, and signed to play with the Roosters, who were coming through, I think it was 2004, 2005 season. And Bennett just sacked him. Bennett just put him straight back to reserve grade, and that was it. He refused to play him. So coaches can do that. Now it's so cutthroat that they're unwilling to do that. But this is a strong measure by Benji not to pick him. It's a tough one. Like, he's gone there. He's put at the time we go to press, Adam Dewey was looking to play 5'8", and Galvin's going to go back and play Reggie's now. And you can potentially have the two of them in the same team, and they're a better team. Have Galvin and Dewey in the same team, they're a better team. Because the thing for me is, if I'm a West Tigers fan, 3 straight spoons, my team's now 3 wins from 6 games. I feel like this, I can kind of see the argument from Benji's perspective and the senior players, but in the end, you're punishing the whole club by dropping into the reserve grade this week. Yeah, you are. You are, in some respects. But one is, if the players have lost faith in Galvin,
And you got players liking Instagram posts that are pretty much saying get Galvin out.
Yeah, but if exactly they have. So if there's a feeling there from the players, because the other part to it is, if the players have lost faith in Galvin now, and let's be fair, some of them are going to sit down and think, hang on, mate, you're just past the rookie season. He's basically into his second season beyond being a rookie. He's still only 19. He's still got a hell of a lot of football yet he's got to learn. We all know his talent and his potential, but there's still a lot there he's got to get to. And in many instances, they're the guys that are helping him to get there. They're the ones that when he makes a bit of an error on the field or he calls the wrong play or whatever, they're the ones that pick him up and say, mate, don't worry about it, let's keep going. But do they want to contribute to that now? Continue to contribute to his education and his progression when he has just so strongly come out and basically thumbed his nose at the club. That's just the other thing, Tom. It didn't have to be made now, the decision. The Tigers had gone away. We knew that we've heard of unrest there last year. We know that I think the Tigers were aware that was credible.
A couple of senior journos have actually recycled back pages today.
Yeah. That's nothing coming out yet. I was right all along. But on that, they've done that, and they've said to they've tried to go back and look at where he's going, what he's coming, what he's doing, and what the club's at. Now, Galvin has still got a lot to learn. He's still progressing as a player, and guys are helping him out. Now, I can understand the players not wanting to help him now, who could probably think that he's probably getting a little bit too far ahead of himself. But the club was going and getting their ducks in a row to be able to make him an offer that was not going to be an insulting offer. So they weren't going to come in. He's on $350 now. They weren't going to come in and lowball him at $500 or $600, and then wait for another team to come in November 1, negotiate, get it up around 8 and 9, and him then come back to Tigers, who by then are up at 8 and 9, maybe $1 million a year, but him then feeling insulted that they hadn't come with a proper offer early on. So they came basically to him with top dollar.
Top dollar. This bloke's 19 and he's standing to make $1 million a year.
So the offer was he's already contracted next year. He's on about $350 next year. They've got to top that up to the best part of $1 million, and then add 5 more years on top of that at a best part of $1 million each of those years. So he would have had 6 years at $6 million. So they did that. The Tigers did it the right way. They had a meeting last week. Isaac Moses, the manager, Shane Richardson, the chief executive. Basically, they were told they weren't looking to stay there this year. And then on Monday, beyond the 2026 season, then on Monday, Moses rang Richardson and confirmed it, mate, just letting you know, definitely won't be there beyond 2026. And
that offer had been made at that point.
Yeah, well, they've been spoken about.
So it's not a DC situation where they say they're not staying, then the offer comes in after.
No.
My understanding was the offer was on the table.
The offer was there. Yep, the offer was there, but they didn't even want to negotiate the finer points of it. So
the funny thing for me is it's like they're saying it's not about money, but it's clearly not about money because it's a lot of money the Tigers have offered. And if Parramatta have already come to the table, and if you're right, and he is going to go to Parramatta, and it's about the coach. Jason Riles is pretty unproven, and I can't say his halves have played that well under him this year. So it seems a strange decision.
In that respect, I don't know. You'd have to ask whether Galvin's actually had a little secret meeting with Riles. Yeah, but I will say Riles comes from that Melbourne background. He's coached also assistant at the Roosters. He's also done a stint playing or assistant coach rugby union with Eddie Jones. So he's got a little bit of a rounded education there. And I think he is one of those. I think his pedigree, his coaching, training has been pretty top notch. It'd be hard to find someone he's had over a dozen years as an assistant coach. So he's not rushed into a head coaching job. Benji's the opposite. Okay, and I think this was part of the risk that West took when they appointed him as their head coach, is that Benji never even coached an under-19s team. He'd never been really an assistant coach anywhere as a proper full-time assistant coach. He was doing a little bit, they came in with this little bullshit idea that they did with him being assistant to Tim Sheens. But within half a season of that first season as Sheens' assistant, he was essentially doing all the coaching. And the way the dynamics within that how they'd organise that. It had already shifted. So rather than Benji do 2 years as an assistant under Sheens, then take over 3 years head coach, halfway through that first season, he was essentially being the main coach. The players recognised that dynamic had shifted. And the hard part, and we see this all the time when we get coaches come in without any background whatsoever, but they come in as legends of the club, or they come in with these 5-star playing careers behind them. The tough part is what you're figuring out what the players can do for you, and also being able to make that tough call in a tough situation. Yeah, one of the old coaching sort of analogies is, you don't really become a coach until you lost 5 in a row. Yeah, then you start to figure out what you're about. With Benji, hasn't, I know he's had some tough times there, but it's sort of been protected because they were running last, and they were still running last, and everybody's a club legend and all the rest of it. This year's going to be a tougher year for him than ever, because people are actually expecting something from him this year.
And he's got the cattle. He's made a couple of captain's calls, bringing blokes in.
He has. I know. The difference between head coaches and assistant coaches is head coaches got. Assistant coaches are all care, no responsibility. And I know. I remember talking to a coach some years back. He was looking to get someone to play hooker. Could not find anyone, and he said to his assistant, "What about this bloke?" The assistant's like, "Mate, can't tackle." "What about this bloke?" "Mate, he can't organise anything." "Mate, what about this bloke?" "Mate, he's not fit enough." "What about?" He just went through half a dozen different choices. And then the head coach said, "Well, mate, every time I say someone, you say no. Who do I pick?" And he said, "Well, mate, you're the head coach. You pick them." You know what I mean? And that's the way they work. It's all care, no responsibility as assistant. Yeah. And Benji's now finding himself in that situation where success is living or dying by his decisions, and ultimately it's got to be his decision. And that's the tough part about coming in when you haven't had that experience. You haven't had to sit there and watch. Well, if I try this, will it work? Because you're doing it all at the top level for the first time. And that's a very hard place, and we've seen it in the past. Wayne Pearce took over straight into the head coaching job at Balmain way back when. It didn't work. Paul Langmack had never coached, went straight into South Sydney, didn't work. Terry Lamb came in and took over from Wayne Pearce. He didn't work. His first coaching job. There's been all
Brad Fittler?
Brad Fittler didn't work. Kevy Walters had a little bit of experience as a assistant here and there. Okay, he had a little bit, went over and did some head coaching over in France, but even then he found coaching his own club again at the Broncos how big that was, which is what Benji's trying to do, coach his own club. It's so difficult to get a result there. You basically you're appointed ahead of your time, you're appointed on reputation, and pretty quickly you find out that doesn't mean a lot when you start clocking up losses. So he's in a tough spot, Benji, and I've got no doubt, knowing the Benji the way, I know him. I'm not obviously a great mate of his, but I'm friendly with him, and he would be burning at this criticism of him as a coach. And I remember when he first got the job, Tom, I said to him, "Mate, how do you know you're going to be able to do it?" Because I spoke to him about the difficulty of being a first up coach with no real background in coaching under 19.
This isn't Ricky Stewart, right? Ricky Stewart went and coached Jersey Flag, I think it was.
He coached Jersey Flag.
Then he coached the Roosters. And then by the time he came back to his club where he was an absolute legend, he was a certified coach.
He was. And you go about the best coach ever, Warren Ryan, a guy who changed the game. He went and coached down at the Illawarra comp for years. John Money coached up the Central Coast for years. They all have some sort of background. Even blokes like Jason Demetrio and Christian Wolf, they coached Queensland State Cup for many years. And then they suddenly were exposed to the pressure of the NRL and just found that at another level. But when I spoke to Benji, I said, "Mate, how do you expect to do this?" But his confidence, one thing Benji's never lacked is confidence. Yeah. And he said, since he's been looking at retirement as a player, he was keeping notebooks, and Wayne was coaching him, and a few other coaches were coaching him. What he was doing, he was always taking notes about how they handle certain situations. And Benji was a smart footballer, so Benji knows his
I was going to ask you about that, because I think towards the end, and Benji became a bit of a game manager, particularly those years that he played at South.
Yeah.
But when he was at his best and they won that comp, he was a flair player. He wasn't an organised halfback.
He's still very young, yeah.
So when he played in the halves early, he was a kind of eyes-up footy player.
Yeah.
It's not like looking at a Cooper Cronk who's starting to do a little bit of early coaching, and he was a master of owning the game and directing players.
Yeah.
So it's not a natural transition for someone who was so good at playing eyes-up footy into coaching.
He did transition towards the end of his career. So I think because he got to the end of his career and he started to have probably lost a little bit of pace. He started to get shuffled around from club to club a little bit. He did think about his game different. He did take on a bit of a mentoring role.
And he did actually have a couple of decent seasons at the end.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, very much so. But it's just a tough thing to do. And he really, really... I think this has really burned him. I think the criticism of his burned him. I think that's what's led to Galvin being dropped. As long as as we're being led to believe that the player leadership group had gone to him and said, "Mate, we need to move him on." I think in some ways it's a positive. I like the idea. If you the guy's not going to be part of your future, why have him as part of you now?
No, I totally agree. The thing I wanted to go back to quickly is we've talked about it a lot. We talked about it a lot a month ago, but if I'm a Parramatta fan now or I'm part of the Parramatta Footy Club, I'm pretty excited by this because from what I've seen out of Dylan Brown, Dylan Brown is not lighting any world on fire, and I'm now getting the bloke that is touted as the next big thing in rugby league straight in off the bat.
Exactly, and that's the argument that the NRL will use. So for all the disappointment West fans are feeling right now, for all the disappointment Parramatta fans were feeling 5 weeks ago, Parramatta fans have suddenly got a spring in their step again. They go, "Oh, beauty, we've lost Dylan Brown, but you know what? We're going to get Lachlan Galvin."
But shit pushes down. How spewing are you if you're a Knights fan now and seeing deals like this happen?
That's exactly it, mate. But that's the way it rolls. That's rugby league. I tell you what, that's why we talk about it, Tom. I don't know what to say, but it's. I just think that they're going to have to start looking at it.
I mean, you've watched a lot of this, and I think it is one thing that, again, I said this at the time with Dylan Brown, and I did ask you about DCE at the time, thinking, as soon as a player like DCE announced something like that, the headlines are immediately, where should he go? Who is he going to benefit? Is he worth the cash? And I want to just pause here quickly on Lachie Galvin. Yes, he's got massive raps on him. Is he that good? Do you think he's worth making a massive play on at this stage in his career?
I think so. Look... There used to be a time you'd say certainly it was because you pay a little bit now and you get him at a cheaper rate later in his career. The way managers are now shopping players around anyway, you can never do a good deal with a player anymore because the minute a player, or more specifically his manager says, you know what, we're playing for unders here, his manager will start to shop him around, legally or not, he'll start to shop him around to get a better deal. So clubs can no longer do good deals with players, and that's where I think in some respects the NRL's got to protect the clubs because clubs can't sit there and sign a player who's maybe his average value is $500,000, but they got him for $400 this year, $500 next year, and $600 the year after. That 400 year, the manager will just say, "Mate, if you don't give us a pay rise, we're out." And there's always a club like they are vultures. This is the other thing. The clubs all get pissed off about it, but they're happy to just eat the pickings out of their rivals when fortune comes their way.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to ask you about is it's pretty clear that Tigers fans and the Tigers players are pretty pissed off about this Galvin situation. They're not looking at it like the way that, I mean, by all reports, Parramatta fans looked at Dylan Brown, Parramatta fans and players and said, okay, that's life-changing money. He has to take it. Similarly with DCE, the way that he went about it, the fans and the players got behind him and were very public in their support. How come within 24 hours it's not going that way for Lachie Galvin?
Because he was offered life-changing money to stay, not to leave. You can understand Dylan Brown going for what he went because Parramatta said that they couldn't really match it. But he's been offered, we're led to believe, somewhere similar to what he's going to take to go elsewhere. So essentially he's not saying yes to the money, he's saying no to the club. And that's the difference. And that's what's, I think, really pissed off fans.
What about the early chat about him potentially not getting on at all with Jerome Luai? And then
I think it matters now. It might be. Look, I don't know if it's right
because apparently Luai is a very big fan of Latu Fainu.
Yeah,
and if he's got him under his wing, and I'm Lachie Galvin, I'm thinking, well, I'm a young bloke who wants to learn too. What's doing here?
That could be true. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I wouldn't be surprised if that's true. But I tell you what, there won't be many watching the Magpies and the Eels at Lidcombe Oval this week, knowing he's going to play. They're not going to get a cheap ticket to watch one of the future superstars. The Tigers fans would be quite happy to leave him alone now. I think he's done his dash there.
What do you reckon the chances are of us walking out of this and we hear that Melbourne Storm have called a press conference because Jerome Hughes is moving on?
I don't think so.
I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised.
Anything could happen.
Good to be back, Kenty.
Good to see you again, mate.
Cheers, everyone.